Have you ever just been home and felt annoyed? You weren't quite sure why, but just something was off. You just felt kind of restless, uncomfortable. And maybe you think, well, maybe I'm just hangry. So you go over to the fridge and you start scanning it from top to bottom to see if you find anything that might catch your attention to help satiate this annoying feelings that you have. You start going through the things. Ketchup? Nah. Ham? Ew. It's slimy now. Nope. Then you move some things around hoping you might find something intriguing. You'll see something. Ooh, this is expired. Nope. You give up on the fridge. You close it. You go over to the pantry and you begin the ritual there too. Open up the pantry, start scanning from top to bottom, moving things around, but nothing. Then you see this festive tin blue container. Ooh, Christmas cookies, we'll still have some. You grab it, you open it up, but you've been fooled because it now stores a torn bag of all-purpose flour. You feel even more annoyed because you didn't find anything. So you give up and you go back to doing what you were doing, maybe watching TV. And even doing that, you can't find anything that really catches your attention. 10 minutes pass by, you're like, let's go to the fridge again. As if magically something new appeared. So you go back to the fridge and nothing. Then maybe somebody sees you doing all of this or hears the commotion and they ask, are you hungry? Yeah. What do you want? Don't know. What are you looking for? Don't know. Then you're not really hungry. As kids, we hear that all the time from our parents. You know, we know when we need something. Our minds, our bodies, our spirits, when they get restless, it lets us know that something is off. And sometimes what we need is pretty evident, but other times it's not. Other times we're not quite sure what it is that we want or what we need. And when we don't find it, whatever it is that we're looking for, we end up feeling restless, annoyed. And if we don't know what we are looking for, then much less will we know where to find it. So I'm using this as an analogy of the Christian life, because this is the Christian story. The Christian story is us as a humanity, knowing that we need something, feeling restless, and struggling to find out what it is and where to find it. Now this story, it began, of course, with the people who had lost it all, people who were enslaved to Egypt. And as slaves, it was pretty evident to them, for them, what they were missing, what they needed. They hungered for freedom, for peace, for health, for prosperity, for safety. They hungered for a place so their relationships could flourish. So naturally, they think to themselves, where can we find this that we are looking for? Once we're out of slavery, what can we do to have what we're looking for? And so they think, okay, we're gonna build a new political system that's gonna work. We're gonna have a powerful army that's gonna work. We're going to have a strong religious and cultural identity. That's going to help. And this is the only thing that they had. This is the only ideas that they had. So when God then begins to speak to the human heart, God begins to use these ideas, the only thing we have, to then speak to us and move us towards that which we need. Now, an analogy that emerges in this experience of slavery, in this experience of desiring freedom, is that of a joy-filled banquet, where food and drink, which are signs of joy and prosperity, overfill a table. And where can we find a banquet like this? A wedding. Across cultures, every culture has wedding rituals. They have wedding banquets. It's this universal phenomenon. So in the case of the people of Israel, a wedding was this multiple-day ordeal. It was a big deal. And wine was important because it was thought of as having two different purposes. One being medicinal, and then the second one being that, well, a little wine or a little more can give you an extra sense of joy to an already joyful celebration. We know this. I know this. Which is why I keep telling the sacristan to not be stingy and fill my chalice to the brim. They say it's not a good idea. I'm just trying to bring some more joy to our celebration. So anyway, God is using this powerful image of a wedding banquet, which is very familiar to the culture, and begins building their confidence by using these images, by letting them know that somehow, like a wedding banquet that's always overfilled with food and drink, God will provide for them. How, they don't know, but somehow they trust that God will provide. And this is something that's written all over the Old Testament. Wine becomes, and food and banquets become an image of the promise of God. Proverbs 9, "Come, eat my food and drink the wine I have mixed." Sirach 24, "Those who drink of me will thirst no more." Amos 9, "I will restore my people, they shall plant vineyards and drink the wine." So we have Israel being now freed from Egypt, and they reach that promised land. They are now in that land that God had promised, that land of plenty, where they would be able to have the banquet, their fill and their drink, or so they thought. They thought it was done. They had it made. But it wasn't long before they felt like something was off. Something was missing again. And they kept going back to that fridge. They kept opening it up, looking for what they were seeking, trying to find what they needed, but in the wrong places, resulting in an abuse of the land and freedom that God had given them. And that resulted once again in slavery. This time they ended up being slaves in Babylon. Now this is the second experience of slavery for them. And this is what led them to understand that slavery, and the reason they got there, was a consequence of what they had done, which they called sin. And only God could then free them from sin somehow. They needed not only joy, but they also needed somewhere to find healing for the sin that kept them being enslaved time and time again. So what we're hearing in that first reading is the people returning back to Jerusalem after that Babylonian exile, after being enslaved for the second time. But this time, instead of reaching Jerusalem and saying, "We've got it made, we have what we wanted, we're back in Jerusalem," that's what they did the first time. They learned their lesson. Instead of doing that again, they end up placing their hope in something greater. So they come up with cleansing rituals with water to at least make them feel like for the time being they're being cleansed of sin, that they're being satiated from this need of something more. And they also petition that God not be quiet, that God not be silent, and eventually give them what they really need. That they didn't know how God would do it, but they trusted that God would. And so they returned to this familiar image to describe their hope, that God would indeed provide joy for his people, like a young man getting married providing joy for his bride. So this is the context that we need in order to understand what is happening in this John's Gospel, in this wedding of Cana. Because in a way, John is using, and Jesus is using this event as a metaphor for all of our lives, for all of that history that we just went over, and fulfills it. So we have a joyful wedding feast, and they clearly lacked something. They ran out of wine. And that's something that was considered a disgrace. They would have been the talk of the town for a long time. It's like, whenever you go to a wedding, if the food was bad, that's all you remember. That's all you talk about afterwards. Can you believe the steak was cold and it was tough? You forget everything else about the wedding, but that stays with you. So they ran out of wine and they could have panicked. They didn't know what to do or where to go. And here begins the point of Jesus. Like the people in that first reading who petitioned that God not be quiet, that God not be silent, Mary goes to her son and petitions that he do something. She doesn't know what her son will do, yet she trusts that he can and he will do something. And she does. She convinces him to do something. She convinces Jesus to do something, so Jesus looks around to see, okay, well, they're out of wine. What can I do? Well, what do they have? It's like opening their fridge. Not much there. But there's water. Oh, there's a lot of water. All right, bring me that water. Bring me that water which was used for symbolic cleansing as an attempt to satiate their need to be cleansed from sin. Give me that water. Transforms it into wine. At a later banquet, the Last Supper, we would come to understand that this wine would be the very life of Christ. Later on at the crucifixion, we would understand that this life is being offered through the shedding of his own blood. A blood that has the power to cleanse, to forgive, to reconcile, to unite, to fill the people with joy and hope. And thus Jesus then is our symbol of that bridegroom, and the church itself is now a symbol of the bride. So Jesus is completely replacing this need to something actual, to something real, to something tangible. And all of this Jesus provides with what they had, through what seemed to be an empty fridge. Jesus takes what they had to give them what they needed. In our lives, Jesus takes what we have to provide us with what we need at those deepest levels: freedom, belonging, joy, union, life, peace, purpose, eternal life. St. Paul later on talks about charisms and gifts. It's a whole other homily, but it goes in that direction. So whenever you're struggling with something in your life, when you know that there's something missing, you're not quite sure what it is, but your spirit is just restless. When you know that something is off, but you don't know where to go, step number one is go to Jesus and ask God to not be silent, to not be still, to do something. And if you're open to it, allow Jesus to open that fridge of your life for you and be able to point to the only things that you have so that he can do something with it. Jesus, I'm struggling with my marriage. I'm coming to you because I'm struggling with my marriage. Something is off. I'm losing love for my vocation. We're drifting away. I'm feeling more joy speaking to this specific coworker than I am speaking to my spouse. I don't know what to do. Jesus says, okay, what do you have? And maybe the answer is nothing. My fridge, my pantry is completely empty. I have nothing. And then this is where Jesus points to what little we do have. Maybe there's your phone, some accumulated work, vacation time from work, an old gift card to this fancy restaurant in Seattle, and says, use that phone, which you seem to touch more often than your spouse, and look for a good marriage revival weekend retreat and book it. You can do it right on your phone. Take your spouse out on a date with that gift card. Use your vacation time to do a getaway. Give me what you have, and I will give you what you need to save your marriage. Jesus, I'm struggling with my faith. My prayer is dry. I can't really find meaning in anything that I do. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go, so I'm coming to you. Jesus will ask, what do you have? Nothing. My fridge, my pantry is completely empty. Not much. So then Jesus begins to point to a few things that we do have. You got your phone and says, you have that prayer app that you downloaded a year ago. You opened once. Use it. You have a subscription to Amazon Prime. How about instead of ordering things that you don't need, get a good spiritual book. Free shipping, you'll get it in 2 days. Oh, look, your phone analytics say you spend an average of 4.5 hours on your phone a day this week, mostly doom scrolling. If you're already spending that much time on your phone, why don't you look up The Chosen and watch it on your phone at least? Do something that is life-giving. Give me what you have, and I will give you what you need. We know when something is off. We know when we need something. Our minds, our bodies, our spirits are restless. It's some signs that something is not right. And if we don't know what we're looking for, much less will we know where to find it. So the wedding at Cana, dear family, invites us to trust that in Jesus we will find that which we're looking for, that our lives, our fridge, our pantry, though it might seem like there's nothing there, it might not have much, it really is filled with things that can manifest signs of God's presence. And God will use whatever is there, as little, as much as it is, to manifest God's grace to us and lead us towards that heavenly banquet. And that's something that we can begin to experience here and now. That's the beauty of Christmas and Easter. The Word has been made flesh and dwells among us. So welcome to our wedding feast. There isn't much in our pantries. There isn't much in our fridge here. All we have is just a little bit of wine. It's only for me, sorry, not for you for now. We do have plenty of bread, though, for at least one piece for each one of you. It's not much, but I trust that somehow this will be more than enough, and we will be truly satisfied.